I didn't sleep the night after the letter arrived. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I understood it too well. Certified mail has a weight that normal envelopes don't. Not physical weight. Emotional weight. You don't open it expecting good news. You open it because not opening it feels like delaying something inevitable. I left it on the kitchen counter for hours. Walked past it. Cleaned around it. Pretended it wasn't there. Daniel noticed before I said anything. He asked, "What's that?" I said, "Probably nothing important." That was the first lie of the night. When I finally opened it, I didn't sit down. I stood there, one hand on the counter, the other holding the paper like it might dissolve if I gripped it too hard. The language was calm, carefully calm. No accusations, no threats, just information. Rachel was not claiming ownership of the house. She was asserting involvement. That distinction mattered more than I understood at the time. Daniel sat down across from me when I started reading out loud. The same table where we ate dinner. The same table where Rachel used to sit every Thursday night. Wine glasses. Leftovers. Conversations that felt harmless. Daniel didn't interrupt. He didn't react. He just listened. When I finished reading, the room felt smaller somehow. Like the walls had shifted inward without making a sound. "She's not trying to take the house," Daniel said carefully. I looked at him. Not because I disagreed, but because the way he said it sounded like reassurance he'd already practiced. "That's what scares me," I said. The letter explained that Rachel had provided strategic financial guidance during a period of instability. That her role had been informal but material. That her continued involvement would ensure fairness for all parties. All parties. I was listed as one. Daniel was listed as one. Rachel was not listed as a friend. The letter wasn't hostile. It was polite enough to be believable. Professional enough to sound reasonable. That word again. Reasonable. The same word she used the night I first told her I was scared. Daniel kept repeating one sentence quietly. I didn't think it was a big deal. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't angry. He sounded confused. That mattered. Because confusion is harder to argue with than malice. I asked him when he first talked to her about it. He hesitated. Not because he didn't remember, but because he knew the answer mattered. "After you told her," he said. "Maybe a week later." I felt something shift inside my chest. Not pain. Pressure. He explained how it happened. Rachel reached out just to check in. She said she was worried about me. That I seemed overwhelmed. That I carried stress quietly. She told him she admired how steady I was. How responsible. That detail hurt more than I expected. She framed it like concern. Like care. She said she didn't want either of us to make emotional decisions if things got hard. She said sometimes couples needed a neutral third party to slow things down. Not a judge. Not an authority. A buffer. Daniel said she sounded reasonable. Prepared. Calm. She wasn't taking sides, he said. She kept saying she just wanted to help us think clearly. I asked him one question. Did she ever say she was helping herself? He shook his head immediately. No. Never. That answer mattered. Because it meant she didn't lie. She just didn't tell the whole truth. That night, neither of us slept. Daniel lay on the couch. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. Pipes. Floorboards. The refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I kept thinking about how boring the process had felt at the beginning. The lawyer's office. The smell of coffee and toner. The paperwork that felt like insurance rather than risk. Nothing dramatic. Nothing urgent. That's why it worked. The next morning we called a different lawyer. Older. More expensive. Less patient. He read the documents slowly. Not carefully. Slowly. That difference mattered. He didn't interrupt. Didn't nod. Didn't reassure. When he finally leaned back in his chair, He didn't look surprised. "This is clever," he said. I asked him what that meant. He folded his hands and chose his words like someone who knew they would stay with me. "It means she didn't break the law," he said. "She didn't even bend it." Daniel exhaled like that was good news. "It means," the lawyer continued, "she placed herself in a position where she can't be removed easily." I felt my chest tighten. "How?" I asked. He turned the document toward me and pointed to a section I barely remembered signing. The referral clause. At the time it felt administrative. Standard. It allowed a third party who provided material guidance to remain involved in decisions connected to the asset, including sale timing, including mediation input, including dispute resolution, not ownership. Influence. Rachel didn't want the house. She wanted a seat at the table. The lawyer was honest about our options. We could fight it. It would take time. It would cost money. A lot of money. And even if we won, the victory would feel hollow. "She'll never look aggressive," he said. "She'll always look reasonable." That word again. Reasonable. The most dangerous word in the room. Rachel called 3 days later. Her voice was exactly the same as it had always been. Warm. Measured. Concerned. She said she was sorry it had to happen this way. She said she hoped I understood she was only trying to help. I listened. I didn't interrupt. Then I asked her one question. "Why didn't you tell me?" There was a pause. Just long enough to be intentional. "I didn't think you'd react well," she said. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not anger. Clarity. She didn't see me as her friend anymore. She saw me as a variable. After that call, things between Daniel and me shifted in small ways. Nothing dramatic. But every conversation felt rehearsed. Every silence felt loaded. He started sleeping on the couch. Not because we fought. Because proximity felt risky. I watched him pull away slowly, like someone testing how far they could step back before falling. Rachel didn't rush. She didn't push. She waited. She didn't need to destroy us. She just needed to let gravity do the work. The mediation meetings were quiet. Too quiet. No raised voices. No accusations. Just documents sliding across tables. Emails sent at carefully chosen times. Rachel never attended in person. She didn't need to. Her lawyer spoke for her. Always prepared. Always calm. Every delay framed as fairness. Every suggestion framed as balance. The house sat in limbo. Not sold. Not safe. Just waiting. That waiting cost us more than anything else. Legal fees. Emotional distance. Energy. Daniel started working later hours. Not because he had to. Because home felt heavy. I stayed behind. Alone with the paperwork. Alone with the silence. One evening I opened an old text thread. Rachel's. I scrolled back years. Birthday messages. Inside jokes. Photos of dinners. I wasn't looking for evidence. I was looking for the moment I missed something. I didn't find it. That terrified me. Because it meant trust doesn't always give warnings. Sometimes it just opens doors. The first real loss came quietly. We dipped into savings meant for repairs. Then savings meant for emergencies. Then savings meant for the future. Each transfer felt small. Together they hollowed us out. Daniel suggested selling sooner. I hesitated. Not because I loved the house. Because selling felt like admitting something had broken beyond repair. Rachel's lawyer supported selling. At the right time, he said. Always that phrase. The right time. I didn't know it yet, but the right time was never going to be when it helped us. And that was how the end began. Not with a fight. Not with betrayal shouted aloud. But with paperwork. Silence. And a friend who never raised her voice. Daniel moved out 6 weeks later. Not because of a fight. Not because of another woman. Not even because of Rachel. He said he needed space. I didn't argue. Space was already everywhere. He packed slowly, carefully, like someone who didn't want to disturb what was already fragile. He took clothes, books, the mug his sister gave him years ago. He didn't take much else. When he left, the house didn't feel empty. It felt paused, like it was waiting for a decision it already knew was coming. We didn't tell people right away. Not friends, not family. Felt too complicated to explain. How do you say your marriage ended because you trusted the wrong person with the right fear? So we didn't. We said things were stressful, that work was busy, that we needed time. The mediation continued. Emails, calendars, deadlines that kept shifting just enough to keep us unstable. Rachel's lawyer remained calm through everything. Every message was polite, measured, reasonable. That word followed us everywhere. Reasonable doesn't sound dangerous. That's why it works. Daniel and I met for coffee sometimes. Neutral places. Public enough to behave. Quiet enough to talk. We avoided the past like it was radioactive. But it kept leaking in. Every conversation circled back to trust. Not Rachel. He said he didn't know when he stopped feeling like we were a team. I said I didn't know when I started feeling alone while married. Neither of us was wrong. That made it worse. The house stayed in limbo. Not sold. Not secure. Just waiting. Waiting costs money. Waiting costs patience. Waiting costs marriages. The legal fees grew quietly. No single bill felt devastating. Together they became suffocating. We dipped into savings meant for repairs. Then savings meant for emergencies. Then savings meant for the future. Each transfer felt small. Each one mattered. I started noticing how differently Daniel spoke to me. Not cold. Careful. Like he was afraid every sentence might become evidence of something. I hated that. I hated that Rachel had turned conversation into a liability. One afternoon, Daniel said something that stayed with me. I don't know how to be your husband and protect myself at the same time. He didn't say it accusingly. He said it like a confession. I didn't know how to answer. 'Cause I didn't know either. The house sold below what we expected. Not disastrously. Just enough to hurt. Enough to feel like another quiet compromise. After fees and mediation costs, there wasn't much left. Certainly not enough to start over easily. Rachel never profited directly. That was the cruel elegance of it. She didn't need the money. She needed control. And once she exercised it, she exited cleanly. No mess. No fingerprints. Daniel and I signed the final papers in silence. Not together. Just in the same room. When it was done, he said one sentence. I don't know how to come back from this. Neither did I. The divorce was quiet. No courtroom drama. No accusations. Just paperwork. He looked tired. Older. So did I. We hugged at the end. Not romantically. Just respectfully. Two people acknowledging they survived the same storm but lost the map. I moved into a smaller apartment across town. 1 bedroom. Quiet. No memories attached. I thought that would help. It didn't. Silence is loud when you're not used to it. The first few nights I slept with the television on. Not to watch. Just to hear voices. I stopped unpacking boxes. Stopped fixing small things. Stopped imagining anything past the next month. Rachel's influence was gone on paper. But the damage stayed. That was the part no lawyer mentioned. People think betrayal feels sharp. Doesn't. Feels administrative. Emails. Schedules. Agreements. It feels like watching your life get processed by people who don't know you. Months passed. Then something unexpected happened. Nothing dramatic. Just distance. Distance from the constant replaying. Distance from the anger I thought would last forever. I started sleeping through the night again. Not every night. But some. That felt like progress. One afternoon, I ran into someone from my old neighborhood. She asked about Rachel. I said I hadn't spoken to her in years. The woman hesitated. Then said, That's probably for the best. Apparently, Rachel had moved on quickly. New circles. New roles. Always helpful. Always trusted. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. Just a strange confirmation. This was her pattern. I realized something then. Rachel didn't ruin my life. She revealed a weakness in it. Not my kindness. My need for certainty. I wanted someone to tell me things would be okay. She offered structure instead of comfort. And I mistook it for care. Years later, people ask what happened. I give short answers. We grew apart. Things got complicated. I don't mention Rachel. Not because I'm protecting her. Because the story sounds unbelievable unless you lived it. Sometimes I replay that Thursday night. The wine. The leftovers. Rachel's voice. You're smart to think ahead. I understand now why that sentence mattered so much. It gave me permission. And I wanted that permission more than I wanted safety. I don't hate Rachel. That surprises people. Hatred requires intimacy. And she stopped being intimate the moment she stopped being honest. What's left isn't anger. It's absence. There are people who destroy things loudly. And there are people who dismantle them quietly. The second kind is harder to explain. Because nothing looks broken at first glance. If you asked me what the mistake was, I could tell you. It was telling the wrong person the right fear. If you asked me when everything changed, I could tell you that too. It wasn't when the letter arrived. It wasn't when Daniel left. It was when I assumed trust didn't need boundaries. I still think about Thursdays. Not with regret. With clarity. They were never harmless. They were just comfortable. And comfort is where we stop paying attention. The damage didn't announce itself. It didn't demand an apology. It just stayed. And learned how to live inside the space I used to occupy. People assume the story ends when the paperwork is finished. When the house is sold. When the marriage is over. When the friend disappears. But that's just when the noise stops. What comes after is quieter. And heavier. No one tells you how long it takes to trust your own thoughts again. For a long time, every decision felt suspicious. Every feeling needed verification. Was I overreacting? Was I missing something again? Was I about to hand someone access they hadn't earned? I became careful in ways that didn't feel like wisdom. They felt like fear wearing a professional outfit. Friends noticed. They said I seemed distant. More measured. Harder to read. They weren't wrong. I wasn't protecting myself from others anymore. I was protecting myself from myself. There's a specific shame that comes with betrayal like this. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet one. The kind that asks, how did you not see it? People think manipulation requires lies. Doesn't. Sometimes it just requires timing. Rachel didn't create my fear. She waited for it. She didn't force her way into my life. I opened the door. That realization took years to sit with. Not because it wasn't true, but because it hurt differently than blame. Blame is loud. Responsibility is quiet. And heavier. For a long time I replayed the same questions. What if I hadn't said anything? What if I'd told Daniel instead? What if I'd slowed down? But those questions don't change the answer. They just delay acceptance. Eventually, I had to ask a different question. Why did I need her approval so badly? That one took longer. I grew up believing that being responsible meant being prepared. That if something felt structured, it must be safe. Rachel spoke my language. She didn't offer comfort. She offered frameworks. And I trusted that more than empathy. That's not her fault. That's mine. But here's the part people don't like hearing. Acknowledging that doesn't excuse what she did. It explains why it worked. There's a difference. Years later, I don't tell this story to warn people away from trust. I tell it to warn them away from unexamined trust. The kind that feels good because it removes responsibility. The kind that sounds reasonable. If you're listening to this and thinking, I would never let that happen. I used to think that too. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't naive. I was tired. And tired people make efficient decisions instead of careful ones. That's where manipulation thrives. Daniel and I never rebuilt what we lost. But we didn't leave as enemies. That matters more than people think. We were both changed by the same experience, just in different directions. Sometimes I wonder who I'd be if that Thursday night never happened. If Rachel had just listened. If I'd gone to bed carrying my fear alone. But that version of me doesn't exist. The version that exists is quieter, more deliberate, less impressed by confidence, more interested in consistency. I learned something that doesn't fit well into advice quotes. Trust isn't about how long you've known someone. It's about how they behave when nothing is at stake for them. Rachel behaved perfectly, until something was. And that's the part that stays with me. Not anger. Awareness. These days, when someone offers help too quickly, I pause. When someone sounds certain about my life, I step back. Not because I assume the worst, but because I've learned that safety isn't urgency. It's patience. If you're still listening, I want to say this clearly. If you've ever trusted someone and paid for it, you're not foolish. You're human. And if this story feels uncomfortably familiar, that's not an accident. Stories like this don't go viral because they're dramatic. They go viral because they're recognizable. Most damage doesn't announce itself. It arrives politely, with paperwork, with reassurance, with someone saying, "I just want what's best for you." So if there's anything I'd leave you with, it's this. You're allowed to take time. You're allowed to say, "I need to think." You're allowed to protect parts of your life that feel too personal to explain. Not everyone who listens deserves access. And not everyone who sounds reasonable is safe. I still think about Thursdays. Not with regret. With understanding. They weren't the problem. They were the opening. And I don't live my life afraid of openings anymore. I just choose more carefully who I let walk through them.